I don't need permission.
Yes, you do.
No, you don't.
You actually don't. North Carolina is a one-party state, so and he has gone ahead and said that he's recording it, so everyone is aware, and so you can speak accordingly.
Or we do not speak accordingly.
That's what I mean by speaking.
Please, exceptional children, open discussion.
Okay. Since I believe I'm probably the only one here left from the group with EC issues, I'll read the following. Okay. Okay. I'll go through the issues that I have seen. I've been told that I can't discuss issues that are being investigated, and that includes what's going on with my son, so I won't. There are a lot of issues with the EC program that go well beyond treatment of Owen, my son. School has engaged for years in a pattern of actions against EC students at the school and against EC students who are looking to enroll at NCS, as well as against teachers or staff members who disagreed with the way the EC program has been run. For example, there have been multiple cases of violations of EC students' IEPs and 504 modifications and accommodations. Several EC students over the past 2 years have either been failed out of the school or have withdrawn because of the issues they and their parents have experienced with the EC program. Multiple EC staff who had disagreements with the administration have left the school. Certain teachers have repeatedly stated that they are opposed to making any modifications or accommodations for EC students, despite the fact that it's the law to do so. NCS has forbidden its EC one-to-one assistants from communicating with the parents of the students the assistants are working with. At least we know that, we being Owen's parents, know that we are not allowed to communicate with Owen's newly assigned assistant. I have been informed of multiple instances where NCS staff members told parents of prospective students with IEPs that their IEPs needed to be reviewed by the school before the student would be enrolled. Quoting from a woman who had this happen last spring. Quote, when my oldest got in on their lotto, meaning the lottery, I asked them about how they work with students' IEPs for when my younger child with the IEP would attend, and they told me they may or may not be open to enrolling him depending on his IEP needs. They told me that they choose which IEPs they do and don't take. This is blatantly illegal under federal and state law. On the same subject from a former board member, quoting, I was on the board for 6 months and very much got the feeling that some members were looking for ways to avoid taking EC children. There were questions as to whether or not we could have the IP info prior to the lottery. Summing up, the school has broken the law multiple times, consistently, and I believe willfully, for its existing EC students. And I found out more about, as I've dug into this, probably even worse, in preventing EC students from coming here. That is against federal and state law, and explicitly against its charter.
So I would like to challenge that one. We brought Noah here this year. The school knew that he had an IEP, and we were on the wait list. We were 12th on the wait list, and we were accepted. So I like to challenge that slightly with the fact that
that's an anecdote.
That's your experience.
That's not a data.
Has been a little bit different than maybe what he has experienced in.
No, it's not. But against my experience, when Owen had an IEP coming into Neuse, this was a while ago. Not this administration, not this board, but the director then said that they wouldn't take a student with an IEP. We had to have DPI come in and tell her that they had to take children with an IEP. So this has been endemic here for years.
I would say that I have a child that came in with an IEP 3 or 4 years ago, and I did not experience that issue. That was 3 or 4
Okay,
years
that's, again, that's anecdotal, but the...
But I'll be completely transparent. I'm the board member who was on the board for 6 years, and I sat at a board meeting where a board member absolutely said, do we have to take these students? It was when we were getting ready to vote to expand the number of EC classrooms, contained classrooms that we had, and had to hire 3 more staff. And this was a discussion.
May I ask when years, months, days,
Within-
like,
It was last year.
It wasn't
a mandate, Martha. They weren't saying don't. They were asking a question out of sincere, like, I don't
There's-
understand this.
Why would that even
I was
come
gonna
up?
ask the question
Yeah,
there, as a
I
board member,
completely disagree.
well, I mean,
I
as,
completely disagree. I saw Sharon Johnson's face.
It
and
is in the
I
school
completely
charter.
disagree.
okay, I'm asking
There
a
is-
question though. Do you think that that person may have known the federal law when they asked the question?
No, which is why they asked.
It's in the school charter. How can they not know?
Board members should know the federal law. I mean,
Michael,
I've had
proposed
problems
solution train all board members on.
Yes.
Yeah.
on
Okay.
all
I'm just gonna
federal
go fast
laws.
forward on
Yeah.
this one.
Okay, so my son's got a 504 and he had a 504 coming in, and the accommodations that he was supposed to have were not put in place at the beginning of each year.
Because it's not taken seriously.
No, it's
The year- Not the beginning
It
of
isn't.
6th grade year, none of the 504s and the IEPs were distributed to the teachers before the first
None.
day of school. And the law requires that. So we walked in the
Yes.
first day of school and not one of my child's accommodations were in place in 6th
I-
grade.
And mine
I've heard
were-
that multiple
and mine were
times from
not
other-
for 3 weeks.
Mhm.
And they had initial testing that was going on, and my son is supposed to get additional time.
And they continue
He's
to not
supposed
get
to-
what they're supposed to get. Their
my son-
504s and their IEPs
My
are not
son
met
has
on a
a
regular
teacher who
basis.
specifically will not allow for the time that he is supposed to have.
And so
Again,
we're
breaking
talking
the law.
about the
And
staff.
has said so to
We're
him.
talking about the staff, the counselors not being educated. I've had issues with FERPA and people not understanding what FERPA is. This is a public K through 12 school. I cannot believe that we have board and staff that don't understand what these federal laws are that they're supposed to be adhering to on a regular basis. So my proposed solution is that we have more education, and we make sure that the staff that we're hiring is aware of their responsibilities within their job, because it was the responsibilities of the guidance counselors to have that information to the teachers prior to the first day of school, and it did not happen, and it
Yes,
was the
it did
law.
not happen for my
And-
child last year or this year.
Can I say that my daughter in the middle of the school year had to get a 504? I didn't know what it was. I didn't ask for it.
That's
Ms. Sandora came to me and said, because of the issues she's been having, you should ask for this meeting. So I'm gonna take the initiative to set up a meeting with the teachers and you, and the paperwork from the doctor, and we'll go over what she needs. And my son also has an IEP, and honestly, this is the one aspect of the school that I really can't complain about, because the teachers, the 4th grade teachers have accommodated my child like you wouldn't believe. They go above and beyond for her, especially that woman sitting right there.
I was gonna say, so I think it's hit or miss depending on the teachers.
I agree.
Because I will say
With
in
that.
3rd grade, with Miss Cade, with Mr. Kaiser, and with, just forgot her name, Miss Atkinson,
yeah, it's very much a Mr. Ward worked with Owen, and he was
Amazing.
great.
right. so
Other
amazing.
his English teacher this year, no,
It's hit or
and she is the
miss.
one who has a reputation for not doing so.
I would
So we
absolutely
need
not.
training, like, so I would just like to see training, because clearly we have pockets of people who know, and know what the purpose of it is, and know to follow it. We didn't have a single problem in 3rd grade, because every single one of those teachers, once we got that 504 in place, every single one of those teachers was on board, and we didn't miss an accommodation. But then we get to another grade where maybe the teachers either don't care. I mean, we have teachers who shouldn't be teaching anymore. We all know that. We have teachers
Everywhere.
and, like everywhere. We
like
have,
it's not-
you know,
yeah,
everywhere. It's
that's
not
the
just
whole
Neuse Charter
state,
School. It's
country.
everywhere. So it's hit or miss. But they're definitely, you know, I believe what these people are saying, that they're being turned away as soon as they're told that they're telling the school ahead of time that they're having an IEP. You know, I had a problem getting the 504 for both of my children. I had to fight tooth and nail, and involve, DPI, by contacting them, because I was made to believe that didn't happen here. Once Michael didn't have the speech needs anymore that he was provided, we couldn't get his IEP transitioned to a 504, and every single year, we're constantly pushed to reduce what his services are, and the school can't even meet his services. They can't meet the
Can't or
testing
won't?
needs. I think part of it, I'm gonna be honest, part of it is can't. I think
Okay.
that the school is overwhelmed and they don't have enough staff to do this.
Okay.
When a child is supposed to be in a testing setting and with 12 or less children, and he goes to his testing setting and there are 24 children in there because the school doesn't have the place or the resources to provide all of these services. So I don't think that it's all an unwillingness. I think it's that they're overwhelmed.
I
And
agree.
we have classrooms that are far bigger than what we were promised 12 years ago. I mean, it's, when we came to Neuse Charter, it was supposed to be 18 in kindergarten and like 20 in the other classrooms. And we've got 25, 26, 27 kids in a classroom now. The teacher just can't. If the teacher has a classroom of, 10 kids with 504s and IEPs, how do you expect that teacher to manage that? And then there aren't the assistants, to help pull the kids and do what needs to be done. So I think that there's some blatant disregard for the law. There's no reason why those children's 504s and IEPs were not given in accordance with the law ahead of time. But I think also some of it is just the sheer number of children we have and the sheer size of the classroom, and that we just don't have the resources to handle all of
The
these
resources go
individual
back
needs.
to,
So, yeah, so I hear a lot of assumptions about why these things aren't followed. So I wanna just ask a question for the teachers, cause I'm not a teacher, I don't know. When you get your training and you come into a school, how much background have you had in what the federal law is and how to follow an IEP or a 504, or do you?
It's in a teacher education program, if you are not specifically going to be an exceptional children's teacher, it is very minimal.
So you really don't know what's
And
required until
well,
it's laid
often-
out and,
it's not on the teacher, it's on the administration and EC staff at the school.
okay,
And Ms. Kate,
that's why I was asking the question.
I can speak for myself. First of all, our EC department for elementary, I think, are wonderful, and the way we work so well together, I don't know of any time that we've had that many children testing at the same time, because we work with a schedule. And we work very closely together to make sure that we are all following the kids' plans, because ultimately it's all about the children. It's
Right.
not about anybody in this room. It's
Right.
about the children. And no, I was not trained specifically for EC, but I know how to read. And at the beginning of every school year, I go through my children's cumulative folders and I make sure this child has this and this and this and this. And they have a nice little sticker on them that lets me know, okay, this child has another folder, a more confidential folder, that I need to go and speak to someone else that's in the EC department to get further information about this child. And then I've always been given all the documents that I was required to have to be able to start the school year with that child.
And
So I can't speak for middle or high, but I know elementary, I mean, they're rocking it as far as I'm concerned.
we are.
So is there
We
a
know
way,
exactly what
so
we're
is there a
doing.
way, I guess I'm asking the administration, is there a way to accumulate all of these teachers at the beginning of the year that do have EC students and do a training and an expectation and whatever would be necessary to follow those EC and 504 plans all together, so that everybody hears the same message?
Have we
I
moved
think
into
that's a
solutions yet?
reasonable, I'm sorry.
Have we moved into solutions yet?
Can I talk
We
about
are,
a
yes.
problem first, though, before we do?
We-
So I want to build on,
I capture it the right way.
I want
Hold on
to,
1 second.
okay,
I think that is a reasonable request.
Okay.
I think that just like everything else that we do in the school day, it is something that we all need to have refreshers on each and every year. It never hurts, and it should be a continuous learning process, not for all of us.
For everyone, I mean, the whole campus.
So, go ahead, Kevin.
and that's,
for proposed solutions.
so the last thing, or that, well, I mean, not necessarily, but the only thing else that's in my mind is that, like, I'm a finance guy, right? So I do budgets and finance all the time, and I know the implications of what I'm about to say, but I feel like the EC program, even, so we are on the elementary side, right? It's understaffed. Or needs some kind of structuring or something, because we have had multiple EC meetings, and it does seem, Sandora's great, love Sandora, Mr. Squibb, I don't have anything critical, right, about them, but as we're going through these EC meetings, it does seem like the plan that is being written for NOAA is being tailored around the staffing abilities and the resources, right? And so there are things that we want to do, and even in these meetings, we will mention things like, you know, this is not the best suited, here's what we think is needed, and it's, oh, we don't have the time, or we don't have the resources or the staffing to be able to do that right now. We'll have to kind of hopefully come back to that, you know, this is, so that's a goal, we'll discuss it next year, because hopefully these things will happen between now and then. But it's very much so, like, we are not able to kind of develop or implement like his perfect plan. We are having to tailor it around the current staffing and the current resources.
And that again is in violation of the law.
Right.
There are a
Yes,
lot
I
of
agree,
things.
and I
It's-
agree
I
as
mean,
a
I
parent.
understand it's realistic because you don't have what you don't have, but
Right.
at the same time, it is absolutely
Right.
not legal.
And I agree as a parent that I sit there in Michael's 504 meetings and I agree to things because I know that what Michael really needs, the school can't provide. And so it seems like a waste of time and just spinning wheels to be asking for things that I know aren't going to happen.
I don't know, but I've never seen any ask, and that might be because I'm only maybe in particular channels of communication, but I've never seen a request for like volunteer needed for testing on X day. So that there's,
They ask for proctors, but
you know, well, I mean, like, but that's for
for
end of year testing. I mean, like, if for just in that one example of where, you know, like somebody's, there's only supposed to be 12 kids in this area, we've got 24, and I'm hearing that there's obviously scheduling that works well in other areas that, you know, if we've got things that we know are working in one area and we have a need in another, like,
I imagine that
I can
tricky
volunteer. I mean, I have time.
I
but-
imagine it tricky for liability though.
Right. I'm gonna write them as a question.
I mean, and
So
that
we can
and that
research
could
more
be, but how could we possibly figure it out? I
Right.
mean, you
Yep.
know,
Sure. Sure.
I just a curiosity question, because I don't know, is federal funding, this is a federal mandate, it's a federal requirement, is federal funding given based on a per student? So,
No.
if it's a matter of funding.
It's also state law. It's mandated by the IDA is federal law, but there are
It's just
concomitant
like a
state
resource
laws.
problem,
It's
that
a
they
resource
don't have
problem
funds
for
the
public schools
resources,
too. But
I mean, is there a solution there somewhere
it's
in the?
the law. They have to follow the law. I mean, regardless of whether they say the money is there or not.
I'm just
It's
trying to say, like, if there's not enough resources, is there a solution somewhere that can
Right.
get more resources?
Right.
right? Is there a catchment? Is there a
Yeah.
program that supports? Like, I've got a kid right now on my caseload who's got a medication that they need to sustain their life, and it's being denied by their health insurance. There is an organization, the National Kidney Fund, that actually, that is one of their big pot of money is for that specific need. It's for medications that are denied so that the children do not have to, or adults do not have to go without that medication. Like, is there some sort of other catchment area out in the community? I mean, we have lots of churches that seem to want to come into our campus, you know, are they willing to bring their pocketbooks to help us out? Like,
it's
You can't do that.
So like, you know, we need, for like the basic school, you know, the typical kids, you know, the mainstream kids. Every so often you'll see like Miss Ragland post that she started a fundraiser to try and bring new supplies into her classroom.
Yeah.
I think if there was like maybe, you know, if you just had the option thing, if there was something like that, that the parents of the EC kids could help put together to bring funding to that department.
the funding is already supposed to be here. The law says the
Yeah,
school
well,
has
we
to
don't
spend.
get the same funding that the public school does, we already know
But
that.
the law says charter schools have to do it. When
Well,
there's not a yes, there's not a yes but.
Right.
They have to do it. Period.
Okay, well, the elementary EC department are just brought in 2 new people this year.
So,
Okay. Well,
So let me ask the board and the administration, has there been a gap analysis done on the shortfall of resources needed to support the students that are in the school?
for EC.
How much is that?
Is there a particular request that was, are these things that we don't have, or is it people?
Right.
And I know, and I'm not quite sure, so I work at the community college, and we're under the same IDEA, and there are caveats for that, because it's a reasonable accommodation.
Right.
So if I had a student.
it's
and,
whatever is written into the IEP.
we don't have IEPs at the community college, but there have been times where a student has requested something who has an approved,
Okay,
accommodation.
before we go too far down there, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here.
What I'm saying is it blanket that a school has to provide every single
Individualized education plan, not for everybody.
Right.
This plan is built around what this student needs.
Right.
The accommodations are put in there. The school legally has to adhere to all of them.
They have to be reasonable though. They can't,
No, they don't have to be
You're a
reasonable.
neuroscientist and you're gonna get, you
But
know.
that's what I'm saying, there is a federal
think-
caveat that
right.
if the student, said you have
It's
to
not
have
going to-
escalator.
It's not going to go into the IEP if it's something like
No,
that.
not the accommodation, the ability for the school to.
It doesn't matter. If it goes into the IEP, that it has to be there.
The
But
school has
I
to
think there's
put
a,
what's
yeah, but I
in the
think-
IEP. So what I
I
can
think
only
we need to investigate that, cause
It's the law. There's nothing to investigate.
Well,
the school
but you gotta have
enters
the
into
money.
an agreement. So
No, you don't
the
have to.
benefits
It's the
to
law. I mean,
But you gotta have the money.
but it's the law.
Ladies and gentlemen,
There are a lot of
we
things
have
that are the law.
conversations at a time. We have several conversations happening. There are some different ways of
Interpret, yeah.
the community college and where we are talking about right now, okay? We, at this point, have our 10 minutes of proposed solutions and or action item determinations, and then we will be wrapping up this meeting. Glenn?
so I propose, and I understand, I hear what you're saying, that
I'm
you.
not sure that you do.
I do, I really do. I understand that you're saying you have a plan that is mandated by law
Yes.
and it needs to be followed.
Yes.
I hear the board and
There is
administration.
no but.
Well, I understand that. There's also a board and there is an administration. It's just like I work during the day too, and if I don't have money to buy raw materials, I can't make product.
It's irrelevant.
So it
No,
doesn't.
it's not.
Even if it's the law.
Straight up.
Ladies and
So-
gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen,
So,
at this point,
okay,
we are gonna talk about proposed solutions and or action items.
all right, I'd like
to
to make a
address this.
proposal.
Okay.
I'd like to make a proposal that we do a gap analysis of the students that you have in the school, what it would cost to provide all of the services that are necessary in the IEPs and the 504 plans.
And you first have to have
And-
valid
They're not
IEPs.
getting what they need.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's administration, that's working with the parents, that's working with the counselors to create those plans, those documents. And then there's a cost associated with providing those services. Then there's funding that is being provided currently for those, I believe. What is the gap between those two? And then we can work on a solution closing that gap. I mean, we have to.
Was there, I thought you might have said something that I missed.
No, I'm saying in terms of funding, I'm pretty sure that the school just gets one lump sum per student, and it's not, you get X amount for EC, you get X amount for this. To provide a child with an IEP, these services is the law. If the school has to take money from somewhere else in order to provide these services, that's what is supposed to happen. It's not a matter of going out and getting more money. It's not a matter of saying, oh, well, we don't have the money. The federal law is clear, the state law is clear, the school's charter is clear.
Caitlin, you were saying something?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay, fair enough. During the conversation, several things that sounded like proposals came up, so I started typing them in and verified this is what I heard correctly. That orientation and training for board members related to IEPs and 504 should happen in that same onboarding process that we discussed earlier.
All staff
Similarly-
too, right?
Similarly,
Okay,
orientation and training for all staff related to FERPA, IDEA, and 504, so I'm gonna add FERPA up to the top one too, because nobody needs to be excused from FERPA training. Then I have a specific time, I'm gonna put at the beginning of the year for it to capture that part. Or a semester, at the start of each semester. Because for some students, their classes may change during that time frame. For teachers to be able to work together to review student IEPs, etc. Ask the question, is there a way that volunteers could be used to help with separate setting for regular tests and quizzes? I think that it gets into, you would then know that all of these students have an IEP, which would then potentially be a violation. So
it's okay during proctoring, because it's like, we're proctoring.
Okay, but I can
But
possibly
then-
volunteer in another area
Right.
that can free somebody up that has
Right.
that privilege.
So it's a great
Right.
question
Yes.
to ask, to be able to figure out, is there a way
Because I don't
volunteers can be
mind
used to support that process?
You could put
Right,
volunteers
because-
in the classroom.
I mean, I
or
could
the
sit
teacher
and read-
assistant to do the proctoring.
Because I proctored actually for the IEP students, so I knew in that classroom setting, I was in a classroom where they were getting the extra time. So I then knew every student in that classroom had an IEP, so I'm wondering.
Could you just have like
Well,
a sign of
and here's,
confidentiality
right,
agreement or something?
and I've been reading up on, no, I have, I've been reading up on some laws that if, well, we can talk about it later when we get to the next time we figure these out, but, and then the last one was the new one about conducting a gap analysis of the students that are enrolled at cost.
Okay, I would like to add to that one, because it's a important, necessary precursor, is determine if all EC students, IEPs, and 504s are what they need to be. Because we've heard that some of the IEPs, they say, well, we can't do this, so it doesn't go into the IEP. You can't do gap analysis based off of that. You have to do it based off of what each student's requirements are, and then figure out how much money that costs, and then figure out how you're going to pay for it.
Tell me if I didn't make it wrong by saying it this way, evaluate current IEPs and 504s to ensure they are properly aligned to student needs.
Yes.
Any other? Or action items?
I think it'll all stem back to those findings, right? Because then you know what you need, and then how to address those specific things. Because I mean, I think otherwise, it's all a question of resources, teachers, like hands on decks, like whatever. But all of that kind of stems directly from that analysis.
Teachers, do you guys have anything else that you would like to add to the open discussion concerning this topic, or solutions or action items?
I would like to ask if is there a cap on EC students, or is there any rule or any law or any initiative by Neuse Charter to try to make one, or?
The way the enrollment lottery works is that we capture the student's name, their date of birth, their proposed grade level, the parent contact information, and the address. The reason we have to do that is to verify they're a resident of North Carolina, that they're legally allowed to make enrollment decisions for their student, and that we have an idea of what grade level the student which seat they're applying for. Then we run the lottery we've actually had a lot of parents try to volunteer IEP information prior to the lottery. Since I've been administrator, I reject it and say, we don't wanna know that, we can't have that. And then once the lottery is won, we call them up and say, hey, you made it in, and then if they share with us at that time that they have an IEP, we go get that information so we can start planning appropriately for the student's entry into the school. There are occasions where the IEPs are really extensive and we say we're gonna need a little bit of time to figure out how we're gonna implement it here, but there's never a time when we would ever reject a student for that reason, at least since I've been here. I can't speak for my predecessors.
I have a question, I think, that extends on Dawn's question that may present itself to a solution. I understand that all IEPs, when it's written into an IEP, it has to be followed. But does the state have a set of things that they say are to be picked from? In other words, we can't just go out and say, we think the kid needs this or this is this. Is there not a list of things of accommodations that can be selected?
Yeah, there's, I know a little bit about it, not as much as some others would, but there's not a template per se or a bunch of check boxes, but there are general guidelines as to if a student has a weakness in this area, this is the accommodation, these are the modifications. So that may be another action item, now that we're thinking of it, is to make sure the IEP team has a full list of column A and column B. If the student has this, these are the relevant accommodations. Yeah.
I thought we did have those drop-down menus.
They,
I think we all need to have access to seeing them when we're having the discussion. Right, I mean, I think that that's something that families, administration, teachers, parents, everyone at the table should be able to just kind of look at, discuss, talk through.
It's been going on for a while. I mean, it's not a new program, so there should be a standard.
No, but I also say
that you
that
can
stuff
follow.
is so rich.
Yeah.
It is so technically rich. The first time I read one, I was like, I know what this is and what this says, but I know plenty of people they would not have a clue.
Yeah,
How do you
they're-
work with them?
I mean, with them,
No,
I
you're
mean,
not your
well, I
teacher.
mean, I'm a developmental therapist. I'm on the
Okay.
front end.
I was
I
like,
mean, I'm on the front end with an IFSP that would turn into an IEP or a 504 once that child reaches,
Yeah, there are seven different
Preschool.
sections of an IEP. The IEP itself, the one for Owen that we have, is 30, 40 pages, something like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of,
Extensive.
yeah. And we were told it actually needed to be way more extensive than it is, so.
And, you know,
and that's,
We have 1 minute.
I think that's possibly a problem too. I feel like with accommodating these things, it's like, how do you sort through that? That's
The EC teachers are pretty good at sorting.
I know they
On the
are. I
elementary
do.
side of things,
I do.
you know,
I get
I
that.
have full confidence in the elementary EC.
I do too. I'm just saying, like, it's just like, whew.
I think there need to be more of them, but I will agree with that
Well, if
statement
these
as well.
I agree.
Right.
Right.
High school's different. I'll just throw that out.
and I think that's actually a very important distinction. That
Yeah.
there is
I'll-
a difference between the different academies.
Yep, I will say we didn't have the problems we're having now in intermediate and middle. It just started this year.
And I would say that for
Is
me,
he a ninth
it
grader?
Yeah.
transition from
That's what I thought.
elementary to middle is where we started to see the problem and the change. So I think that that's, you know, it's fair to say that we may not have a problem at the elementary level, but we do at middle and.
And I'm speaking as a long-term 8th grade teacher, 16 years, it is, in the middle, it always gets more challenging for some reason, the older the kids get.
More demand.
Well,
Yeah,
I
longer
mean, there's,
classes
well,
and-
there's
little
more
to
time.
do,
There's
so
so
many things anyway.
Well, it's not so much, so the demand for there are more demands, but what I was told while here at Neuse is that every year, the expectation was we were going to reduce the dependence on the 504. And that is proving to be like disastrous because my straight A student is now failing classes over the course of 2 years. And
That's
there's
only supposed to be the case if that is applicable to the
Right.
child.
No, that's not how it's been. I've had
I
Michael's
understand.
504 has been reduced, his accommodations have been reduced every single year because I was told there was an expectation that as he gets older, we would be reducing these things. And I've had teachers in 504 meetings basically, without coming right out and stating it, by their actions and their nonverbal behavior, have made it clear that the things that I want to ask for are impossible. And again, like Patrick said, if we agree that he needs to have it, it's the law and they should be doing it. But on the flip side, like I said before, our classroom sizes are far bigger than we were ever told they were going to be when we started at Neuse. And I really don't think with everything else that is being asked of the teachers that they're able to really monitor all of these things due to the sheer numbers. And I, you know, the smaller class sizes would help that. And more resources within the whole umbrella of EC from 504 to the contained classrooms, you know, are needed.
I am proud to have been able to take this first step in this discussion with everyone here. I think that we came to the table with solutions in mind